Good evening and welcome to the City of Helena City Commission Administrative Meeting. This meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, would you take, well, before you go on to that, I welcome and thank you for participating in the City of Helena City Commission meeting. We are pleased to be able to provide this alternative meeting format in the city's effort to broaden public participation. Please be patient as we may experience technical difficulties during the meeting. We welcome your public commentary. Please read the following tips and guidelines for the app usage and your participation. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
Deputy City Attorney, excuse me, Eric Coate.
Here.
City Manager Harlow Shulk.
Here.
Commissioner Halliday.
Here.
Commissioner Dean.
Here.
Commissioner Logan.
Here.
Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Here.
Mayor Collins.
Here. And just to remind everyone, presenters, those that are presenting on various topics, given 10 minutes to do the presentation. Please be mindful of that. Administrative meeting summary, Lincoln Prosperity Proposal presentation. Madam Manager, you have the floor.
Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. The administrative meetings are a really good opportunity to have good conversation. And Mayor, you had requested an item on the agenda, and that is this presentation from the Lincoln Prosperity Proposal group. So I wanted to go ahead and turn it over to them, and perhaps you would like to give an overview on how this came to be and your request. I'm not sure what your background on it was, so I'll let you share out if you would like, please, Mayor.
Who's presenting for the Lincoln Prosperity Proposal?
Mr. Mayor, this is Eric Grove. I'll do the introduction, and then Karen Good is going to give the presentation.
Go ahead, Mr. Grove.
Thank you, Mayor Collins and members of the commission. My name is Eric Grove. I reside here in Helena at 724 South Beatty Street. First of all, I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to speak today about the Lincoln Prosperity Proposal. Most of you are familiar with my involvement with Helena Open Lands and the South Hills Trail System. First as owner of the Great Divide Cyclery for 30 years, and over the past 6 years as simply a trails advocate. I know many of you have received a lot of email from me over the last couple of years. But you'll also be glad to know that my rabble rousing doesn't end at the city limits. Since 2015, I've been involved with a collaborative effort in Lincoln representing non-motorized recreation interests, including mountain bike use. A very diverse group of people succeeded in putting differences aside and uniting behind a singular vision for not only this incredible landscape that is the Upper Blackfoot, but also the community of Lincoln. I'm incredibly proud of the Lincoln Prosperity Proposal and what it means to our area, that being the greater Helena area, for conservation, for forest management, and both for non-motorized and motorized recreation. Before I turn this over to Karen Good, who will go into more detail with the 10 minutes we have allotted, I would also add Helena's support for this proposal is essential to gaining congressional support. So I would please ask all of you to give it your full consideration. Thanks so very much, and I'll be available for any questions afterward.
Thank you, Mr. Grove. Who's presenting?
Karen Good should be available.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'm looking for Karen's login, if perhaps she can raise her hand. I don't. Okay. She's listed under Erin Ferris Olson, so I will turn on her mic. Go ahead, you have your mic.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure. I must still be in my boss's Zoom account. So we did have a slideshow presentation, which would be really helpful. There's a map on there. Is that possible to share on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Good, do you have your presentation ready? I was under the assumption that you were going to share it. I can move you into a panelist if that's the case.
Could you do that, please?
Yeah, give me just a moment.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay. So do you need me to share my screen with that map?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, this could be interesting because I'm not completely sure how to share my screen.
Okay.
Aha, okay, maybe it's easier than I thought. Wonderful. Okay, this is a little bit oversized, but I think we can totally make this work. Okay. All right. So thank you, commissioners, for allowing us to join you today to share the Lincoln Prosperity Proposal. My name is Karen Good. I'm a Lincoln resident, and I sit on the board of our local community council. Members of our group have been working for several years now to create legislation that would improve our local economy by creating new recreation opportunities that will help Lincoln fulfill what we believe is a potential to be a sought after recreation destination. This proposal would also provide jobs in the woods, protect our community from wildfire, improve fisheries and forest health while protecting wildlife habitat and headwater streams for future generations. We've done a lot of outreach to area landowners and adjacent communities to get their input. We've talked to hundreds of folks, whether at a public meeting or just sitting down at their kitchen table over a cup of coffee, with the goal of getting some honest feedback from these folks on our proposal. We've also hosted several public meetings, either in person or virtually in Helena, Great Falls, Avon, and Lincoln, with the purpose of familiarizing people with this proposal, but also to gauge support, field questions, and get endorsements. We have a pretty robust list of supporters that's growing every day, including a new endorsement from downtown Helena that we just received last week. We're very excited about. The U.S. Forest Service is well informed of our proposal and has been a partner throughout the development of this proposal. We're currently in conversations with our Montana delegation regarding bill introduction, and we're hopeful that we'll see legislative introduction later this year. So we'll take a little virtual tour of the map and I'll briefly explain the different proposed designations. Lincoln is sort of right in the center of the map with Highway 200 running east to Great Falls and then west to Missoula. At the top or north end of the map, you'll see the Scapegoat Wilderness, and to the south, you'll see Nevada Mountain and the town of Marysville. Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why my map is normally like fits the screen just fine, but it is not fitting the screen for some reason. So I am not 100% sure what to do about that. Perhaps important to mention before I move on is that this proposal is strictly federal lands. There's no BLM, state, or private lands in the proposed designation. So we're going to start, let's start with, there's 2 forest restoration areas. Those are the Lincoln Gulch and the Ogden Mountain restoration areas. These areas total approximately 69,000 acres and are largely in an inventoried roadless area. By establishing legislation, the roadless rule would be lifted so that these lands could be managed to protect our community from wildfire, improve forest health and wildlife habitat, while also creating jobs in the woods. Legislation would allow construction of temporary roads for fuel reduction projects. However, all roads would need to be decommissioned 3 years after the forest restoration projects were complete. The 4 areas outlined in orange are proposed wilderness designations. There are 3 new additions to the Scapegoat Wilderness near the top of the map, totaling 16,000 acres. The larger area at the bottom of the map, labeled Nevada Mountain, would be a new wilderness and is approximately 40,000 acres. These areas would protect big game populations for hunters and wildlife enthusiasts and preserve over 500 miles of streams that are critical for fishery health. There are 3 conservation management areas on this map, totaling 63,000 acres. Conservation management areas are something somewhat new. They were first established on the front in the Rocky Mountain Heritage Act, and they were designed to keep the landscape the way it is now. So the best way to describe CMAs is that they allow existing uses to continue while prohibiting new activities. So basically, these areas remain status quo. Recreation opportunities include the Blue Trail above Nevada Mountain, which highlights a new off-highway vehicle trail. And I believe that trail is about 20 miles long. And the Bartlett Creek and Sandbar Creek areas outlined in blue are proposed for motorized recreation opportunities. The community of Lincoln has a strong interest in developing long-distance OHV routes that connect riding areas and create diverse recreational experiences. Currently, there are several important areas where no connection is possible, but the OHV routes created by this proposal would complete this desired loop trail system in the Lincoln Valley. We would plan to work together in collaboration with recreational user groups, the Forest Service, and other partners to raise money to build and maintain the trails through grants like the Recreational Trails Program and the Montana Off-Highway Vehicle Grant Program. There is a purple trail directly above the blue motorized trail that is a proposed new 18-mile mountain bike trail in the Lincoln Valley. I think we're all well aware of the phenomenal growth in outdoor recreation and the benefits and challenges that come along with that. The Lincoln Prosperity Proposal introduces a nearby landscape of recreational opportunity and infrastructure, including trail-based pursuits like mountain biking and hiking. And in doing so, it offers a chance to complement, disperse, share, and lighten the management load of Helena's well-used and increasingly popular open lands. And it helps Lincoln to establish itself as a sought-after recreation destination. And of course, last but not least, the Copper Bowl snowmobile area that is located just outside the Scapegoat Wilderness and outlined in brown is a popular existing snowmobile recreation spot for locals and visitors. This area would be permanently protected through legislation, which means our community wouldn't have to worry about losing this popular recreation spot in the next winter travel plan. And I think that pretty well summarizes all of the proposed designations. But before we open it up for questions, or if Eric has something he'd like to add, I'd just like to urge the commissioners to bring this to a full commission meeting with a public vote to endorse the Lincoln Prosperity Proposal. And I want to express our interest, if the commission decides to support, and helping generate some positive news about that support. For example, we could contact reporters ahead of the meeting where the commission votes on the proposal. We know there are folks in Lincoln and proposal supporters in Helena and elsewhere that would be really excited about an endorsement from the commission. And we'd just love to share that story. And I also want to invite and encourage all of you to take advantage of an opportunity to fly over the Lincoln Valley with Eco Flights on June 23rd to get an aerial view of the proposed landscape. We'd be happy to fly you right out of Helena. It's actually kind of fun. I've done it. I think that pretty well wraps it up for me. I am sorry about the hiccup with the map.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I do have one.
Go ahead, Commissioner Dean.
So it's my understanding, well, first, really appreciate the presentation. Thank you. It's my understanding that the Lewis and Clark County Commission has already endorsed this proposal. Just wondering if that is correct. And then also if you know when they did that.
Yes, Emily, that is correct. And I do not remember the exact date. Gosh, it certainly seems like it was in the winter of 2019.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions or comments from the commission? Thank you. Madam Howell-Schulk.
Hi, Mayor. Thanks, Mayor. I have nothing to add. Not sure if you're interested in a presentation. It seems like the request is to bring this item forward in front of the commission. Obviously, our team has not analyzed it, so I want to assign it to a team member so that when it comes before you, you have the benefit of the staff analysis and information so that you can have it in front of the commission if you are interested in doing so.
Yes, and this has been going on for a while now, so I hope we can do this fast. So I hope the team can work on it and bring it for us to yay or nay.
I'm sorry, has this come before the commission before? I apologize if I've missed that.
Yes, we had a presentation earlier on, I think last year or sometime. Any other comments before we move forward? Well, thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Recommendations from Helena Citizens Council, Ms. Perry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
I have just a brief item for you today. The HCC has not met yet this month. Our last meeting was May 20th, when we met to discuss the final changes to our city budget report and voted to accept the report. Our June meeting is next Wednesday, and at that meeting, we will have a presentation from the city manager, Rachel Harlow-Schalk, and we are looking forward to hearing from you, ma'am. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bear. City Manager's report, Madam Halshock.
4 items I'm adding. I had put together a summary of the items on the agenda for tonight. Want to add to your list, and Howard, whose last name I will butcher. Howard Skirvin.
Well, if you can't pronounce the last name, we're in trouble because we're not moving forward until you do.
I tried it. Did you hear it? I did a. Howard's here to share the Northwest Energy plans based on vote around one of the lighting districts that was completed. Before we move into that, I just want to make sure that you know that that's an addition tonight. I wanted to see if Alexa is here yet. I know Alexa is our new Disaster and Emergency Services Coordinator for Lewis and Clark County. She was coming over from the local emergency planning commission meeting. So I'm not sure she's here yet. So I'll keep moving until we get to her.
Madam Manager, if I
Yeah.
might interrupt for just a moment. She just entered the meeting and I've promoted her panelist, so she
Okay,
might
fine.
be trying to get her mic situated.
Thank you.
Yes, I am
First time,
here.
Alexa.
Thank you guys. I'm so sorry I'm not driving, but I am in my car because I just wrapped up our LEPC meetings. So yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
If you could, Alexa, can you just share a little bit about how we work with your position, and also a little bit about yourself, and then you don't have to sit in your, I'm sure it's hot in that car, since and we can also ask the commission if they have any questions of you too as well. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So I just started in February, and I've been learning a lot over the last few months. I've had an opportunity to really get to know the community even more, just through sort of the normal operations day to day of our disaster and emergency services role here. And I've been really honored to be able to work. Rachel and I had a great meeting early on in my tenure, and then really been able to meet with so many of your city, leaders in terms of emergency response, fire chief, police folks, lots of just city business leaders. And my first entrance into this all was through COVID. So got a chance to work with public health, working with local businesses and local community members to get the vaccine clinics going. And then obviously continuing to do a lot of planning in advance of wildfire season, which we know is already upon us. So yeah, so I really think I'm excited to learn more about the city specifically and sort of the risks and hazards that you guys are facing. Very similar, obviously, to the rest of the county. So I don't see a big disconnect there. There are so many challenges, obviously, ranging from the natural hazards that we face to more of the man-made, cybersecurity related, and the potential for those types of issues too. So I don't see a big disconnect, and I'm excited that those issues overlap in a way that we can work on those best practices that we see across the state and really bring those to the community. So just quickly, touching to your question, Rachel, on my background, I've spent 14 years in the Homeland Security and emergency management space. A lot of my time, most of my time has been spent in Washington, D.C. I worked for FEMA for a portion of my time, and really had the opportunity to go all across the country visiting communities that were either in the midst of response or in the midst of recovery from disasters. So saw a lot of diversity sort of in the types of responses that our country goes through, but learned a lot, especially working up in Alaska on some of the more rural and unique disasters that they have up there. So I am excited to bring quite a bit of that experience to Helena. And then I also worked in the U.S. Senate, where I was the director of Homeland Security for the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. So that was a really unique opportunity to be involved in policymaking. So I've seen how things work on the federal level. I've seen how things work on the state level, and now bringing a lot of that down to the local level. So that's kind of my background, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and I really feel like this is just the first of many conversations I'd like to have with you all.
Thank you, Alexa.
Thanks so much, Alexa.
Yeah.
Well, I'm positive we're going to be sharing more work with you as this fire season goes on. So I want to make sure that you feel comfortable hopping over if you have a need to speak with the commission, that we get you on the agenda. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I will mention, if you all decide that as things obviously progress, we just had an update from the National Weather Service that was obviously pretty dire in terms of the next few months for the drought conditions and for continued fire risk. So if you do ever feel like you want an update on a city commission meeting, or just if you want weekly or bi-weekly updates, and I can get you the latest information, kind of package it in a way that is helpful to you all, I am more than happy to do that. I would obviously coordinate with my partners from, from Jefferson County too, since the South Hills are the neighbor, and that would certainly could be where we see it from. So if that's helpful, let me know. And yeah, just any information that you need, I'm here for you all. And then I also have already worked really well with Jake, your PIO. He and I are both sort of brought into this emergency notification issue. And so there are quite a bit of capabilities that we're looking forward to utilizing. And so I know he and I are already linked up if there was an event, we are in lockstep. So I appreciate you guys bringing me here, and look forward to working with you all more. So thanks.
Thanks, Alexa. Mayor, if you're ready, I can punt it over to Howard. Howard, if you're there, if you could please pronounce your last name.
Absolutely. Thank you, City Manager. It's Shervam, but most people call me Howard because of that reason. That spelling is terrible. So commissioners, Mayor Collins, City Manager Harlow Schock, thank you for the opportunity for us to get in a few minutes here at your administrative meeting. If it's all right with you and the mayor and the commissioners, I would like to turn this to Rick Edwards. He is our Director of Community Connections out of our corporate office in Butte. And if that works with you guys, I'll turn it to Rick.
Go ahead, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Howard. I appreciate that. And again, my name is Rick Edwards. I'm the Director of Community Connections at Northwestern Energy. On the line with us also is Sarah Norcott, who works in our legal department, and she is based in Helena. Mayor Collins, members of the commission, I really appreciate you giving us an opportunity to come and visit with you today. Want to talk about a situation that occurred back in your meeting on May 17th. During that particular meeting, there was a request that special improvement lighting district be created for an area in what's called the Skelton Division. And just to recap at a very high level, so everyone's on the same page, in that particular area for which we were requesting a special improvement lighting district to be approved, there are 105 property owners. And in that particular area, there are 50 lights. They're all of an acorn style light. And initially those lights were set back in the 2003-2004 timeframe. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, and I have no idea why, but for whatever reason, those lights were never built. And so what we're trying to do, or what we were trying to do in the May 17th meeting and during the presentation by Ms. Danielson, was to correct that situation. We had no intention of asking the residents to pay any of those costs from before. We just wanted to create the district going forward. As part of the process, what occurred was the city sent out letters to all 105 of the property owners to get their feedback. Of those 105 property owners, 7 responded or protested, if you will. Of the 7 that I would consider protest, 5 really were protests and 2 were, they're concerning, but I understand. And so really, in a nutshell, 100 out of 105 of the property owners were really silent on that particular request. You know, what we want to do, or what I come before you today to ask is just, I respectfully request your reconsideration of this issue. There's a lot of positive reasons that these lights should be there. And we would ask that you reconsider your decision that was made on May 17th, even if it has to be brought to another commission meeting in the coming weeks. Also, we would like to understand the logic behind the decision that you made on the May 17th meeting to decline the creation of that special improvement lighting district. Just to summarize from my perspective, when we look at this lighting district in this area, there are a number of reasons to have these lights there. First and foremost in my mind is safety, followed closely with security, convenience, and certainly aesthetics. You know, if these lights are taken out, then you're going to have one portion of the Skelton subdivision that will not have lights, and it won't blend with the rest of the subdivision. You know, our intention, hopefully today, you would agree to reconsider your decision. But in the event that that decision holds, we as a company have no choice but to send the customers a letter saying that based on the decision made by the commission, we have no choice but to remove these lights. And then beginning in July, we'll actually go out and remove the lights. That's our only option at this point. And again, from my perspective and from the team's perspective, it's much more of a win-win for you, for us, and for those customers if we can leave those lights there and agree to create the special lighting district going forward. So with that, I would be pleased to answer any questions that you might have and be curious in terms of your procedure on how we move forward on this particular matter. Thank you, Mayor Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Any questions or comments from the commission for Mr. Edwards?
Mayor, oh,
Okay, I heard 2 going off at the same time. Go ahead.
I can certainly wait.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner O'Loughlin, was it?
yeah, thank you, Mayor. Commission, I guess I just maybe have one question because I was absent for the second meeting that we had on this. Did Northwestern Energy provide public comment during the public hearing that we held to provide sort of some of this information during the official public hearing?
Commissioner O'Loughlin, I'm going to defer that to Mr. Shervum. I don't believe we did. I believe that we were integrally involved in developing all of the information that was presented by Ms. Danielson, but I don't think anyone from our organization actually spoke at that time. This is something I will tell you, though, that we've been working with the commission and the staff for probably the last 2 years to try and get this resolved and reconciled.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Logan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my comment would be I would be comfortable in reconsideration of this. And just speaking for myself as an individual, I got the vote wrong. And I'll just leave it at that. So I'd certainly consider it.
Thank you, Commissioner Logan. Any others?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner Dane.
So I'm wondering, I just went back and looked at the packet, And I cannot see in there that we got a copy of the letter that goes out to the property owners. And I'm wondering if we can get a copy of that, because I know, I don't know if it's necessarily clear, and it wasn't clear to me at least either, that the lights, this doesn't pass and therefore the lights are removed. And so getting a copy of that letter would be very helpful. And then looking back, I went back and looked at some of the protest letters, and I don't think that's necessarily clear to the residents either. And so I would be willing to, reconsider this on another agenda, but it would be helpful for me if we could get a copy of the letter that does go out to the property owners as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Dean. Mr. Edwards, you said 105 property owners.
Yes, sir.
And 7 wrote letters.
Correct.
Not in favor, so to speak. 2 were, this is not okay, but we can live with it.
Correct.
How many wrote letters wanting the lighting district?
To my knowledge, the way that the information went out to the individual customers, it was a response that if you object to this, please write.
Okay.
Otherwise, stay silent, if you will.
Okay, so those were the only ones that you received.
And
in that light,
the ones you received, yes.
Yeah, in that light, I would also consider revisiting this. Any other comments or questions from the commission?
Yeah, just a question of process for the city attorney. So our bylaws permit us to reconsider if 2 members of the commission who voted on the prevailing side of the vote seek to consider on a motion to reconsider. So we're here during the manager's report on an admin meeting, which we've been reminded is a non-decision making meeting on multiple occasions on an unnoticed agenda item. What's the status, Mr. Coate, of a decision to reconsider this tonight based on this process? And if tonight's the wrong time, then what's the process so that we would have proper public process and notification?
Mr. Mayor, commissioners, I believe that tonight wouldn't be the proper place to come to a final decision on reconsidering that. I would like to research a little bit more and speak with City Attorney Joden on when the proper time would be to take up the matter of reconsideration of this. But I don't believe tonight is the proper place, considering this is not a decision-making type meeting.
And quite frankly, Commissioner Halliday, I don't think we were making decisions, but rather voicing where we stood at the time. So I'm sure we're going to put it on our calendar for a later date. Any other comments or questions from the commission? Public comments? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no raised hands. I've received no written public comment on this item.
Thank you. Madam Howell-Shaw?
Thank you. We'll pull together the process that's appropriate for reconsideration. Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Howard Shervum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, we went back through the Lincoln proposal information, and there wasn't an item on the agenda, so I'm going to continue to review it, just so you know that I can't seem to find what you were referencing. So I'll just keep going forward, though, with the next presentation, which is from TDS Telecom Corporation, who will be introducing themselves to the City Commission and share their interest in the City of Helena and the community. And I think I have Kathleen Davis here to provide that presentation.
Madam Clerk, do we have a Kathleen Davis?
We do, Mr. Mayor. I also have my colleague, Josh Worrell, if we can find him. Normally Josh does our presentations for us, and I handle the cable franchise agreement, so I have a few words to say on that. But Josh, are you there?
I'm here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. Just 1 minute here. I'm going to share my screen with you all. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, Manager Holler Schulk, and Commissioners. My name is Josh Worrell. I'm Manager of Business Development for TDS Telecom. I'm going to, fair warning, I'm going to talk fairly quickly tonight because I'm sensitive of your time, but we have a lot to cover. And if you have any questions that we can't get to tonight, I'm available for breakout sessions to continue to dive deeper into our proposal for the City of Helena. So tonight I'm going to just introduce you to TDS and then what our plans are for the city. So TDS is a Fortune 500 company. We've been in business for over 50 years. Underneath the umbrella of our TDS corporate parent, there's US Cellular, TDS Telecom, One Neck IT Solutions, and Settle Strauss. And below there, you'll see some of the accolades. We are the 7th largest ILEC provider in the country. ILEC stands for Incumbent Local Exchange Carrier. It's just the legal designation for that we're the phone company in 34 states around the country. This map here is depicting our coverage area. So in the blue, you'll see those are our ILEC properties, and in the red, those are our cable properties. So we're a unique portfolio company in that we do both wireline assets and cable. Our general position is let's be the best broadband provider in any community we serve, regardless of technology. So in 2013, we began buying cable companies as a way to organically grow and continue to expand our footprint. Problem is we ran out of cable companies to buy. The cable companies left in today's market are usually acquisitions you see like the Time Warner Charter acquisition, multi-billion-dollar acquisitions, which is a pool we can't play in. While we are a large company, there's a big discrepancy between us at number 7 and AT&T at number 1. And then the other companies that are left around the country, they need extreme network reinvestment, and the amount of capital you'd have to expend to get their networks back up to working order, you might as well build a new network, and that's kind of what we're doing now. So we took 2 fiber deployment strategies across the country. We went back and looked at all of our existing properties that were all copper, and we overbuilt them with fiber optic. And this was a fairly aggressive strategy because we were taking an existing asset that was serving customers today and basically throwing it in the trash can to upgrade it to a more viable technology for faster speeds as broadband consumption continues to increase. And everywhere we did that, we saw tremendous growth, and the take rates were exceptional. I'll point on this slide here, the Net Promoter Score, to give you an idea. That's in all of our fiber areas, we have a Net Promoter Score of over 40. To give you some perspective on that, the cable company generally falls within a 5 or a 6. So in every area that we build fiber, we see tremendous results. I'm going to skip through some of these slides here because I am sensitive to your time. So because of those results, we got the idea, well, what if we went to a community that we were not the incumbent provider, they had no brand recognition, and we overbuilt the municipal limits with fiber optic to offer a competitive choice for TV, phone, and internet. And that's what we did. We trialed this in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. Sun Prairie is a community of about 30,000 people, 10,000 households, and they were actually building their own municipal network because they were so underserved in their community. But due to capital restraints, it was going to take them about 15 years to build out the city limits. So we partnered with them and we acquired their existing assets and purchased them from the city, and we built the city in about 15 months. And in that 15-month time span, we took over 55% market share, and today it's over 60%. When we enter a market, we enter a market with our entry-level speed or broadband speed being 300 meg symmetrical. That's 300 meg up, 300 meg down. We also offer 600 meg, and we offer a gig. And in all of our most recent communities, we're deploying our XGS-PON technology, which will allow multi-gig residential service. So on the heels of this success, our corporate parent committed to us about $1.6 billion to travel around the country and find communities who are growing, great household growth, good demographics, and they're underserved by their incumbent providers. And we define underserved as, generally speaking, when you talk to people in the community, they say, hey, I don't have a choice for my internet or TV service. There's two providers here, but I really have to go with one because the other is not providing the speeds that I need in my house. And we see a market there. We see an opportunity for TDS to come in and offer competition and choice. This is just a brief overview of the benefits of broadband in the community. I'll just point out here on this slide, you'll see home values increase. There's been a ton of different studies done that fiber to the home increases home values up to about 3.1%. I'll point out future-proof there as well. Future-proof, smart city are a lot of the buzzwords people like to throw around. Basically, what that means is once we build this fiber network, the capacity the fiber has is essentially unlimited. So as broadband needs continue to increase and as technology continues to increase, the fiber there can handle that capacity. We just have to switch out the equipment on either ends, either in your home or in our network, and we can provide those speeds to you. So why Helena? I kind of already touched on it. We like Montana. If you haven't heard or know, we executed a franchise with the city of Billings a couple months ago. So we're looking very heavily around the Montana area, because I'm sure you're aware, state of Montana ranks fairly low in their broadband availability. That mixed with your city's attractive size and demographics and household growth make you excellent targets for fiber overbuilds. I'm going to breeze through these really quickly to the end because I'm sure you have many questions, but constructing the network does take construction. So we'll have to come in and bury or hang fiber aerially to build this network. And that can be fairly intrusive and disruptive. We'll have to partner very closely with your public works department to make that happen. We have a fairly large team that works behind the scenes to help filter through a lot of the complaints that happen. But I'll stop here just to be very transparent with you. Throughout this process of building these networks, your phones will ring. There is no easy way to do it. We have to go through the streets and public utility easements to place the fiber and place access points on lot lines in order to offer this service and competitive choice. It's kind of the price of technology progress, if you will. There's no other way to build the network, and it is disruptive. And I'm sure you'll have questions about that, but I just want to be as transparent about that as possible with you. We have a fairly sophisticated notification process. One of our biggest learnings is to make sure the public knows what's going on. And early on in the few communities that we've done, we didn't notify the community as well as we probably could have. And so we have a very robust notification system now. And I can provide these materials to you as well, but I'm just going to scroll through them quickly. So as I said before, here's some of our products. Our internet speeds 300 meg, 600 meg, and a gig. We also have a fairly sophisticated IPTV product. We've partnered with TiVo to develop our next generation cloud TV. We're still big believers in video. We think it's sticky and customers tend to stay with us longer with a video product. The trend right now in the country, as I'm sure you know, is cord cutting. You can go look at our numbers. It's publicly traded, publicly available. We've grown video subscribers 9 quarters in a row. So we're still big believers in video, and it will be a part of our video offering. Part of what we are approaching the commission about tonight and what we want to work with the city on is a cable franchise in order to offer service. So in the state of Montana, we have to negotiate a cable franchise with the cities in order to offer the service. And part of that service will be us remitting 5% of our video revenue to the city once our service is up and running on a subscriber basis. These are just some maps of the proposed polygons. For now, the approved ones are this pink down here. So it does include all of the municipal proper of Helena and East Helena. But we do have projects open for the greater Helena area, as you can see. This is our proposed transport network. transport brings the entire community from nodes. And then there's a distribution fiber. It's about 200 miles worth of fiber to cover the city of Helena, and it covers about 20,000 addresses, or just shy. It's 19,200 addresses. Probably all in, it'll be a $20 million capital investment. And I will stop here because I know I covered a lot. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Wara. Questions from the commission? Any questions from the commission? Any public comments? Madam Clerk?
Mayor, Commissioners, I have no raised hands. I've received no written public comment on this item either.
Thanks again, Mr. Wara, for your presentation, and Ms. Davis.
Thank you for having us.
You bet. Adam Hall-Shaw.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Last item is the review of the way in which we want to spend the balance of the 2021 general fund savings that were made available to us as a result of the reimbursement of expenses through the state made available by the CARES Act. Thank you very much for, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, for completing this fantastic tool. All of you completed and submitted your particular desires and thoughts around which items you would like to fund. You also, in advance of completing this, provided additional items. So thank you for hitting the deadlines and making it happen, because it makes this process much easier when we have the conversation. So I'm going to stop the share if I can find the tool here. There it is. And I'm going to share the next one, which is the results. Do you see a chart in front of you?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. How about now?
Not yet. There it is.
Okay. Just a quick summary of the.
Can you enlarge it, please, if there's
You bet.
any possible way?
Yeah, this is just a big picture overview.
Okay.
I'll go further into it on another slide. So I just wanted you to see at the bottom, these are the primary categories that we have your strategic outcomes. The actual focus of responses were greatly within the improve neighborhood livability and promote a healthy and sustainable community. So just to let you know how those shook out, and then just very few. So these are the number of votes. The highest up are those that received the greatest votes, the greatest interest, I should say, not both, but the greatest interest. And I'm going to go to the next slide and share to you how it plays out by way of math. Just a quick count of the number of commissioners who agreed on particular items. So one commissioner here, you can see on the screen, count of commissioners highlighted in yellow. Those were there were two who stood out and said they wanted to fund particular items. And then obviously consensus has always been around where I've moved forward with implementation at around 3. So based on that, I put the dollars next to them. And this is what you end up seeing, so the first item is the number 2. But I want to focus first on these items that received the greatest interest. And the first was the Housing Trust Fund, and the second was the Rodney Street improvements in the lighting. Now that item came through the business survey, and also several of you and all of us, I believe we also saw requests and emailed. This one, we are also in the middle of the project, so this would be an item that obviously you all agree would be funded, or at least there's a majority of you who are interested. Housing Trust Fund, there was consensus around funding. The number was different. Two had 500,000, another had 300,000. So wanted to make sure and share that. I put in another column here, which is my recommendation. I'll get to that in a second. So going back up to the Helena Community Foundation, by adding in all the number twos, we arrive at 1.878 million total spent, as opposed to the 1.347, which is available. So thinking how we would divide down these twos, which stand out, I offered up some thoughts to you, and they're in the notes. So I'll go from the bottom up because I think those are the easiest to really respond to. There were 3 votes specific to addressing the lost revenue within the pool. Then there were also 2 specific to lost revenue within golf, parks, and the Civic Center. ARPA, those new federal dollars, will cover these lost expenses if you are in agreement with seeking and using those ARPA dollars, those new federal dollars that will be distributed to us, which I know that Director Danielson has completed our submittal for with the certifications. That would cover those items, and we would not need to fund those. Next, we have the business assistance program. So this $21,125 were specific items that were a part of the business survey that were smaller operational asks. The MBAC team has already received $200,000 from grants and loans. So in response to the community needs, I would not recommend that at this point. And instead really want to focus in on the walking mall outdoor improvements. Those improvements, there are 2 ways to make that distribution happen and those improvements happen. The first is obviously it's city property, and we would, with the $30,000, then make the improvements. That walking mall outdoor improvement list was for a stage and outdoor heating. Then continuing up the screen, you'll see I had put in the 400,000. I'll get to that in a minute. Sorry, did I miss some question?
Is it a portable stage or
It would be a permanent stage.
permanent? Oh, okay.
And I don't know that $30,000 would be enough, so I'm suspecting it probably is not permanent, but at least there'd be $30,000 to discuss more with the businesses down on the walking mall, exactly what they had in mind. Next up is the PV. There wasn't a particular project identified, but funding set aside for a photovoltaic project. And then also $90,000 for the 5-point intersection short-term enhancements, and it's noted in the 5-point intersection study. And then I balanced out the first nonprofit support grant. So we did complete that survey with nonprofits on what it would be that they would need to transition to living with COVID. This would be additional funds given to the Community Foundation for distribution in support of those transitions needed. And then last, I am recommending the $100,000 towards the Trails Ambassador. The e-bikes, trail etiquette, and dogs on leashes continue to come up. We don't have the resources with the team to put people out as ambassadors. This is an item that we would seek additional matching funds and provide a trail ambassador for a term limited period of time. So those are my thoughts. That 100,000 comes back down to the Housing Trust Fund. So we had the 2 500,000 and the 1 300,000. That's how I got to the 400. I also obviously pulled it from here and then balanced out what was left here. It's up to you all. I'm open to any conversation if you want to change up how looks, but we basically have $878,125, and I can start using the calculator if you would prefer around the 100,000 and change, or we can continue moving forward. Just
Thank you, Mr. Hollish. How about Mr. Hollishock? I apologize.
That's all right.
Thank you, Madam Manager, and the floor is open to the commission.
Mayor, I just had a quick question for the city manager.
Please go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. So Rachel, I was just curious if you could talk through the conversations you've had so far with both Prickly Pear and then with the Helena Community Foundation. I think that one maybe just a little bit more detail about how that all would play out over what period of time, how big are those grants? Have those conversations happened with the Community Foundation? And I'm just also wondering about their own capacity, because that's a fair amount of funds. So if you could talk a little bit about both the conversations you've had with Prickly Pear and then also with the Community Foundation, that'd be great.
Sure. So the conversation I had with Prickly Pear really started around e-bikes and the conversation of trail usage, understanding what can and cannot be on the trail, and really the need for greater education and outreach. And there was a position, as I understand it, at some point that was doing trail etiquette within Prickly Pear. Our team has been working on a variety of issues, not just e-bikes, but also dogs on leashes and then just general trail etiquette. So in talking with Prickly Pear, there was interest in matching a grant to try a term limited ambassador. So I know that there's interest on both sides, either from us to them or them to us. But either way, we end up with more information available to those who are using our hills than we've had recently to address really those items that we haven't been able to. So that was the first, the Prickly Pear. So the second, with the Community Foundation, yes, they are very interested first with the annual allocation of dollars for the distribution for the commission's nonprofit grants in the community. The capacity they absolutely recognized and shared out to us during their presentation with the city and the county. This is definitely more than they're used to. And they're confident and have been confident. At the time, we were talking about the same volume. Much different conversation when you're splitting the dollars between two counties. So now we're talking about one set of dollars. Either way, we can be more strict or more detailed. What was nice about the survey is that we at least have an idea of the parameters of dollars and types of grants. So from small operations types of requests, one-time equipment purchases, all the way up to larger assets within the organization. Those are on that spectrum, but they would be able to help set up that process and manage it, and then moving forward, make it available. So we have a lot of the information they would need already to complete those awards. We just need to make sure and have that conversation with them on the 500,000. So as far as the competition is related to it, those are obviously, the priority of the City of Helena has been to really, and then these dollars help in that transition to COVID. So that would be the primary starting space for a conversation with the Helena Community Foundation when ready. So I have not reached out to them to start this conversation around the 452. This would be more dollars. They've said they're interested, and we are already working on it for our primary annual grant making. So this would be an additional conversation.
And then maybe one follow-up, Mayor, on the Prickly Pear. So is the idea, what you're proposing is that the city would put forward 100,000 and that be matched 100% by Prickly Pear? And
Correct. That would be the
so
request.
do you think that that's capacity that requires $200,000? I mean, I imagine that it's sort of like a seasonal effort, but maybe not. But I'm just curious, does it require 200,000 of funding for that?
Yeah, so we would have it around, it would be a year-round position, an ambassador in the community. The nice thing about our trail system is they're used year-round. So this would be a year-round position. $100,000 is on average a position with fully, because it's term limited as opposed to seasonal, it comes with benefits. So term limited positions have a different ability for us to attract and bring on individuals. So that would be the anticipated dollar amount.
Oh, so the cost is 100,000
a year. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So could we put 50,000 towards it with 100% match to Prickly Pear? Or maybe
Sure.
I'm just not.
We're looking at 2 years, right?
Well, it's looking at 2 years. We can go to 4 years. That's the right. Yeah.
I see. Okay, so it's over the 2-year period at 200,000. Right. Okay, I see. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions from the commission for the manager?
I do have one, Mr. Mayor.
Please go ahead.
First, just want to thank the city manager for consolidating all of this information. Really excited about what's included in here and supportive. I did have a question. I know that there wasn't a particular place yet picked out for a PV project, but I'm wondering, you know, how quickly the team thinks that we could move on something like that, and you know what the considerations are, since we did have that other money from the last budget as well.
The money from the last budget is related to a slowing of the contract. So that, and it was related to the charging stations project that slowed due to contract issues. So that in the case of the PV and in a city facility, I would entertain any of the submitting commissioner if they had a particular facility in mind, but I would work and follow up with Patrick to find out. I would like to note, unfortunately, Patrick has accepted another position back at Carroll College. So he is unfortunately not going to be working for us. We will miss having Patrick. He's been a delight to work with here. And he's very excited to go back to teaching at Carroll as a physics teacher. So he shared his surprise that offer. So definitely going to pick his brain before he leaves. So
great, thanks. Sad for us, but happy for Carol.
Hey, his tax dollars will still be in the community. So, any other comments or questions from the for the city manager from the commission?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner Logan.
I just would like to say that I appreciate the manager's sort of consolidation of all of these, using the balancing act tool, and in addition to an understanding from her perspective of the needs of the city. And I'm supportive of her recommendations here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any others?
Yeah, so just a couple of questions, Mr. Mayor, with regard to allocation of dollars. So looking down the list, the last chance 5-point intersection short-term enhancements for 90,000. Normally we would pay for something like that out of the street maintenance budget or gas tax, since both of them are renewing revenue sources. I wonder if there was a reason why we didn't, and if there was a reason why we wouldn't just switch that now and free up an additional $90,000 in the general fund.
Great. Thanks for your question. I'm not, I can follow up and find out if we have $90,000 available within the gas tax to go ahead and move forward, which would offset that 90. These came in last night, so I certainly follow up to find out if that 90,000 is available in another way.
Great. I mean, I think we had it in the gas tax for sure in the budget this year, and street maintenance would be the normal source. That's why I'm just curious, and it would free up money for any other commissioner discretionary project. So there's really no loss to moving that out of this. But I'll wait and hear back. I think the other similar question with regard to the Rodney Street improvements lighting, was there any discussion on some portion of that or all of that being shifted toward the urban renewal district dollars, the TIF funds, in terms of splitting it 50-50? Again, another ongoing renewable source, dovetails with the goals of the TIF district, frees up general fund dollars that we're also concerned about. So was there anything on that one?
No, Commissioner, there was not an evaluation on the use of the TIF funds. It would require an application into the process, but I can certainly talk with our team to see if that's a reasonable, if that's possible.
And then the last one would be identical with the Walking Mall outdoor improvements, which would again look like they're pretty much TIF, in the wheelhouse of the TIF funds for downtown, and whether or not that would be the same thing. I mean, the city's put in multiple applications for use of TIF dollars that we've approved and sent through the process. But again, another $30,000 that we could scrimp, scrounge, and save. And I'm always looking to save the taxpayers' money and not spend it from places we shouldn't be spending it if we can find other dollars.
Great. Yeah, I will follow up. I'm not sure the timing and process and as well if they would be available to the city. Again, those two projects came out of that business request survey. The two businesses would be asked to go back. The problem we have with the Walking Mall is it's city property, so we would have to do the project. So there's just a finer slice. And the same with the lighting improvements. The timing would be of obvious consideration due to the current work we're doing. And I think that was really the effort of the neighborhood, was to try and take advantage of having the project going on at the same time. So I think not only do we have the opportunity for timing, but also dollars to consider. So I'll make sure when I respond with those answers to share those.
That's great. And I was going to ask, in part of that response, Ms. Haugen had informed us in the past that in a situation where you expend general fund dollars or dollars from another source, but then we're looking to use TIF dollars, that there would be the possibility of retroactively essentially swapping those out, sort of backfilling it. So if you've got the cash right today from one source, but you're going to make the TIF application, it'd been my understanding from her explanation previously, we could do that, and that the timing of it shouldn't stop us from being able to try to use TIF dollars where we don't have to use general fund dollars.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'll follow up with Finance Director Danielson and Director Haugen.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments from the commission?
Mayor, maybe just one comment on the TIF dollars. I mean, I definitely see the value of looking for ways to sort of free up the general fund dollars. There is something also to be said that these are freed up general fund dollars as a result of CARES, COVID funds. The extent to which we have projects that are tied or related to COVID, there may be merit to using some freed up general fund dollars for that to potentially preserve the TIF dollars for sort of longer, bigger term projects. for what that's worth. I mean, I think it's worth thinking about and looking at if the city feels like this is a good use of TIF dollars. But maybe there's merit, you know, for some that are more COVID related projects, kind of considering the one-time dollars here.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think that's a great point. The walking mall and both Rodney Street came, like I said, out of those two surveys. Sorry, I saw your on mute go on. Commissioner Halliday, sorry about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, I don't necessarily have a need to put any of those into the TIF, right? I didn't vote for Rodney Street improvements, lighting, or walking mall. You know, we're going to fund those anyway. But you know, it's not always clear to me that we as a commission get all of the information as to the respective buckets of money that these things could come from. And right, like if somebody had wanted to fund another project at $175,000, it's not clear that anyone who voted for number 3 recognized that we could have used TIF funds, right, to do that project, and then had an additional $175,000 to spend someplace else. So it actually may have been a zero-sum game in somebody's mind. And that's why I'm bringing that out to the 3 people who voted for, or 2 people who voted for these things, that you might have actually voted for something using general fund dollars that maybe you should have allocated someplace else and could have actually voted for one more item. And so I'm not trying to be sneaky or tricky or really say we should do it either way, since I didn't support either of them. I'm just reminding you that sometimes analyzing those buckets of money can actually get you more on your wish list. And in this case, it's probably getting some people less than what they wanted, or they restricted themselves. And so just trying to bring that to people's attention.
To that point, Commissioner, and commissioners and Mayor, if in fact we can turn these dollars around in a timing that's fast enough, it seems like if I can recommend a method, you know, that would free up more dollars, $205,000, we go back to hitting fully into the Housing Trust Fund, and then going into any of the other particular areas. I do say the Centennial Trail obviously stands out. The problem we had with the Centennial Trail is that it was split out, and that's where the $150,000, it looks like it did not collect, and I apologize, I see that right here. 2 items, there were 2 votes for the Centennial Trail. If I can free up those dollars, and it seems like I should not be recommending to you all that trail ambassador, since this would be to pave, it looks like $150,000 to pave between Benton and Centennial Park. That would pull the 100 here and pull the 50 from potentially somewhere else as well, perhaps at the nonprofit level, just to try and be more thoughtful. And yet the Centennial Trail, all of you, well, many of you, all 4 of you are very interested in doing something with that. And it seems like that's the next logical place that I need to move money. So if you're in agreement with that, I'll pull that 100,000 off the trail ambassador and put it into the pavement of Benton and Centennial.
No objections from me.
Mr. Mayor, just
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Just a quick question. So I know, you know, obviously on the bottom you included, you know, the availability of ARPA funds for some of these other pieces. Especially now having a more robust explanation about the trail ambassador idea, is there availability for us to move that maybe to the ARPA funds for discussion instead of just totally nixing it?
I don't believe so. Based on the uses within the ARPA dollars, I don't believe that we could make that leap. We could potentially look at projects, but they're so narrowly defined, not that I'm aware of. Commissioner.
Okay. Well, and Mayor, I mean, maybe it seems like maybe getting a little bit more meat on exactly what the nonprofit grant might be helpful. I mean, I think about sort of like what are kind of the bigger items that we've heard over a period of time. You know, I think about homelessness, sort of the nonprofits that are helping to address those issues. Perhaps like trails is another kind of bigger picture item. But I mean, I don't know if there is, if the city manager is anticipating providing more detail or conversation about kind of what those nonprofits, or if it's sort of we make the decision today and it's ultimately going to be the community foundation deciding. But I wonder, given that those conversations haven't started, if that's also another space where we can say, okay, we'd like to prioritize, you know, partnerships with nonprofits in a couple buckets, you know, and perhaps trails is one of those buckets. I don't know.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, maybe dovetailing on that, just the reason I bring up, and I appreciate the city manager spotting that $150,000 situation with that portion of Centennial Trail. You know, the reason I'm highlighting the places where money is being spent, where there's another bucket that it can come from versus general fund dollars, is Centennial Trail can't come from any source but the general fund, because it's not a right of way. It's not going to be included in gas tax or street maintenance. And so I see we have 2 votes there for at least that one. And I appreciate you looking at what you can do to play with the numbers there. But, you know, as we talk about commissioners supporting Centennial Trail, you can't support Centennial Trail through street maintenance. You have to do it through the general fund. And that's why I'm highlighting when we do something like $90,000 for short-term solutions at the 5-point intersection, that's a very streets related project, right? So if somebody said, let's just switch that to streets, and someone was like, oh, and my next thing was going to be a Centennial project, then you can do both now, right? That's the beauty of actually thinking about those buckets of money. Because if you've decided, oh, well, I'll support Centennial Trail later, you can't, there's no money to do it. So this is the only time that we really have that chance. So if you're going to say you support Centennial Trail, you have to do it in the general fund. There's no place else to do it. If you don't do it in the general fund, you're not prioritizing Centennial Trail because there's no other way to do it. And so that's why I'm highlighting this issue for the commission if people are interested. If not, again, I'll get off my soapbox at Centennial Trail, but this is the only way we can support it, is through moves like this or potential amendments to the general fund on budget night. So we can't say we support Centennial Trail unless we actually appropriate the money. And this is when we do it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any others? Madam Halshaw.
Great. I will go ahead and move forward with.
Before we move forward, public comments? Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no raised hands and no written public comment.
Thank you. Please continue, Madam Halshaw.
Sure. With that, I'll go ahead and evaluate the potential for the TIF funds and shake free any dollars that we can put into this balancing act here, which is the tool that we use, that of trying to not only get the dollars set aside for that pavement between Benton and Centennial Park, but also that last item of the Trails Ambassador, and getting more to you all, that summary of what those nonprofit asks were as part of the survey. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the end of my part of the agenda, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, I guess it's not the end according to item 5.
That's the best part, is that is where Director Kanopke gets to provide his presentation to you all.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question at the end of the manager's report, since we don't really have a spot on the agenda anymore for commission sort of comments and questions on the upfront at these admin meetings. We've received a few well, I've received a phone call and at least one email regarding an issue with a composting company in town, better something. And I'm just curious if the city has any explanation, just so that when I keep getting these or people ask what is going on there.
Sure. Curbside collection of household waste. And Director Lillian, come back. Don't go away. If you want to go ahead and share out the relationship to the city code and why the letter was sent. And then also if you could send the copy of the letter to the commissioners after this, that would be great. Oh, it's interesting. It looks like Jake also is sharing. Jacob also shared, Jake, our PIO, shared some information to you all in an email before the meeting with Ryan's thoughts as well. So go ahead, Ryan.
Mayor, Commissioner, and the letter has not gone out yet. We just had a conversation with Better Roots Composting, which is run through Tri-County. They're the same entity. What came out is through city code, the City of Helena can be the only sole provider of solid waste collection for residentials in the City of Helena. That includes recycling, that includes household waste, that includes composting, that includes everything. So that is our city code. And we went through the process with Helena Recycling to do an RFQ, contracted with them. So they are our contractor to collect the waste. So that is how we did the curbside recycling for Helena Recycling. So they are basically the sole provider to the City of Helena for compost or for contracting curbside. And so now that with composting, we have a few companies that are coming into town without going through an RFQ process and collecting household and residential solid waste. So in order to allow that, we have to either change the city code or go out for an RFQ process so that we are still the sole provider and we provide a contract to them. We are seeing that it's a great opportunity and composting can be something that we look at. And that is precisely why I want to do the integrated solid waste master plan that is in the budget. So we can look at everything. We can see how we want to look at the city code. What do we want to allow within the city? Does the city provide the waste? Do we have private collection? So we are going to look at everything within the next year and a half through the master plan. But as the city code is written right now, we either have to do an RFQ and then contract with the company. They either have to get the collection off-site, not in city, where they are doing residential waste. The residents could haul their waste as we do with e-waste. That there are several campaigns, so you can haul it to some point, but you just cannot do the collection system in the City of Helena for residential waste. Hope that makes sense, and I'd be willing to answer any questions. Just keeping it short and sweet.
I have just to add, there's another business that I have a bucket that I received from another business that I believe is a drop-off program. And, we have drop-off programs just like Director Leland described for electronic waste currently. So that would be the distinction, is that I have to take it somewhere as opposed to having it picked up at my home.
So what's the duration for the present contract?
What we're talking about with Mayor, talking about with compost, we do not have any contract with any company to do composting, and the city doesn't provide that at this time, but it will be a service that we are definitely interested in and we will look at through our master plan system. So we do not have a contract for anyone to do composting. We have the 5-year contract with Helena Recycling to do glass, plastics, cardboard, and aluminum cans or metal.
Did I hear you right when you said it will take about a year and a half to go through the master plan?
That is Mayor, that is typically the time frame that it takes to complete a master plan of this size.
which is why I liked the bucket idea, because I could just take it in my car over to the location. So that's just the distinction, is that at least there's that availability. But right now they cannot collect that bucket from my home.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I guess I'm wondering, I mean, this is obviously something that I think that we should at least have an interim solution for, since a master plan, would not be done for the next year and a half. And I'm wondering if the manager has any idea, how quickly we might be able to come up with some interim solutions to deal with this. Just because, obviously not everyone has the time, availability, mobility to go drop off, that. And this also is not a service that we provide. So it's not like there is a city alternative for people. So I'm wondering how, what you might see as a turnaround time for finding an interim solution before that master plan is completed.
Thanks, Commissioner. I know the team just put out an RFQ for electronic waste. That would probably be the duration and turnaround on something if we wanted to offer up into the community that interim solution through an RFQ. So Ryan, what's that timeframe look like? And then what would your ability to turn out a compost RFQ for the interim?
Mayor, Commissioner, City Manager, looking at the RFQ I would say that it'd probably take a good 2 weeks just with everyone's availability to go through legal and find out everything that's going on to be able to advertise for an RFQ or an RFP. And then we would want to have it advertised for 3 to 4 weeks and then another 2 weeks or so to evaluate them. So we're looking about 2 months, 2 to 3 month process to be able to get something turned around. We may be able to turn it around faster, but there's several touches that need to go forward. And then we'll have to come back to a commission of how are we going to do this, a pass through costs. We collect it just as we do recycling and then pass it on to the homeowner as a voluntary basis. So we are looking at about a 2 month, 3 month process at the outskirts.
And
Mr. Mayor.
Sorry,
Go ahead,
just wanted
Commissioner.
to finish one more item, Commissioner. At least to say, at least we have the opportunity to drop off in between. So we've got 2 months, 2.5 months to turn around something for an RFQ. I think that seems at least to get us halfway there while we're working on the larger plan.
I guess, and my follow-up question was, when was this letter going to go out? And I guess, what was it going to say? And then another piece of that, I don't know how many providers there are in the community, but I know there's a few that do this. I don't know if it's all, formatted exactly the same. But I guess what was going to be included in that letter and when was that going to go out? And I guess why do all of these companies know that that's coming? Or what does that look like?
So the letter is a non-compliance with city code. They can't collect in the city. Curbside, that's the city code. So that's the letter to this business, in particular, not to all haulers, and all companies, I should say.
Are we saying that they've been collecting?
Yes.
Mayor, Commissioners, that is their business models. They are actually providing a can that they go and collect with a truck. And so that's how it came to the notice of city staff.
And sorry, I was confused because I've heard it said that there's the business that's being served. I've heard it indicated that there's multiple businesses doing this or looking to get into it. who are we serving a cease and desist to? One business, 5 businesses, 10 businesses?
Mayor, commissioners, at this time, we were only aware of one that is actually collecting solid waste from the house, which is the violation of the city code. So we are only sending it to the one business. As we become aware of other businesses, we may have to send additional information or have additional meetings with them.
If we do an RFQ process in the future, 2 months down, are we doing that as a sole source essentially? So if there are 3 businesses providing this service in the city of Helena right now, we're going to pick one as the city of Helena winner and the other 2 are out.
So I think
That's how I understand.
No, that's a further detail. I think that we haven't really even discussed. To create the RFQ is just discussed here. So the additional layer, if you're interested in seeing multiple options available to and throughout the city, that's something different than I think what we traditionally do, which is one hauler under contract like we do with our recycling.
Gotcha. Well, I was just trying to figure out what that stopgap solution looks like that Commissioner Dean brought up, because one stopgap solution is to just get one provider. Another stopgap solution would be to figure out how the multiple providers who are in town or looking to get into town can continue to do business. Those are 2 pretty different questions. Or just shut them all down. That's another question. But those seem like pretty important details to talk about for a stopgap.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, and Mayor, maybe just one comment. I think that this is something that the staff should move on and hopefully move on quickly. I mean, if I recall Commissioner Dean's resolution, with pretty laudable goals to reduce waste was voted on in February. So, we're, 5 months down the line, and I think this is the exact kind of thing that we can do to help reduce waste. And I think something that community members are asking for. So I would certainly support, again, as Commissioner Dean said, some sort of interim solution sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Correct. Any other comments?
Mayor, I have one other item for the city manager.
Discussion?
Before you I just want to clarify one item. We're still obligated by city code to issue the cease and desist. That's the obligation of the city code, and want to make sure that you're aware. That does not stop the RFQ process and the work the 2.5 months out. But I just want to make sure that you're all aware that we're going to be moving forward with that cease and desist. Thank you.
And, I tend to agree with the commissioners. I think 2.5 months is too much. We can put that RFQ out sooner than that.
Thank you, Mayor. I will work with the team to do it the best we can, and we always do.
Thank you.
But at the same time, I think 2.5 months is pretty fast as well, given this is the high construction season. So we'll do our best. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. I think you still have the floor, Madam Manager, with Director Kanopke.
I think O'Loughlin, I'm sorry, sorry. I think Commissioner O'Loughlin had a question.
Oh, did you have a question, Commissioner?
Yeah, Mayor, again, I had just a couple things that I was hoping to bring up during the commission comments, which was not on the agenda, but
it's on the agenda. I think it was pushed further down, but it's on the agenda, item 9.
Okay, I'm happy to wait then.
Okay. Director Kanopke.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Today, I'm bringing forward the next steps for the sidewalk programs that was discussed earlier this year on the sidewalk programs of some options that we presented. This commission gave some direction, and this is what we're proposing right now, to keep the volunteer sidewalk basic program basically the same. Currently, it's funded out of the interfund loan, but I know there was some discussion of other funding options. Currently, it's a 10-year loan, no interest. Let me step back. The volunteer sidewalk program is just basically staying the same. We're just modernizing it a bit. The other piece is that we felt could help further the funds to go farther is a maximum program contribution. An internal lot is saying a lot that's internal of the corners. Understanding the corner lots have 2 frontages, whereas the internal lot has 1. We looked at some historical numbers, and $4,500 is about should cover the majority of just sidewalk improvements. You know, if there's additional improvements, say they want their driveway done or their walkways, you know, that's outside the sidewalk area. So, but the sidewalk itself, and just to be clear, you have purview to make comments, revisions, however you want to look at this. Residential corner lots would be, you know, a $9,000 max. Commercial projects would be $9,000. The process for this moving forward, we'd go out for an RFP in November for a contractor. We'd award that bid in December, January, and then open up the application period for the volunteer sidewalk program, say February 1st. And then once the period would be opened until funds were expended or the contract availability to complete, you know, before the coming winter. ADA ramps are proposed to be covered 100% by the city. Eligible features are sidewalks, boulevard walkways if impacted by the new construction, curb and gutter, and driveway crossings, and the driveway crossing apron if impacted by the construction. Non-eligible program items are participants that do not respond to any of the notices sent by the city, or removal and replacement of sidewalk or other concrete in good condition. I'll pause there to see if there's any questions on that particular program.
Mr. Mayor, I have one question.
Please go ahead.
I know that, I believe, when someone is, for example, getting their, if they live where one of the historic brick sidewalks are, the city has like some of the extra bricks to fill in and everything. Can those households also, you know, when you have to get the roots that are poking up through the bricks, do those households get included in the volunteer sidewalk program?
Mayor and commissioners, in the past they have.
Okay.
It'd be similar to a concrete sidewalk panel that's being pushed up by a tree root.
Okay, no, that's awesome. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments or questions for Director Kanapke? Do we have any public comments? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no written public comment and I have no hands raised at this time.
So you're looking for directions, Director Kanapke?
Mayor and commissioners, I have the 2 other programs to go through. I just paused there.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. The second one that the commission showed interest in was a slip trip and fall hazard program. Funding for FY22 would come from street maintenance was assumed. Program intended to cover those slip, trip, and fall hazards that the city has properly noticed and received no communication or commitment from the property tax owner to fix the hazard. These are primarily broken up degraded sidewalks, vertical deflections, tree roots, things of that nature. Work completed would be invoiced or put on property taxes, interest based on intercap loan rates plus 1.5% admin fee, and then all staff and equipment or contracted services would be included in that invoice. As a side note to this, we are purchasing a sidewalk grinder that would help alleviate some of these vertical deflections if they were less than 1 inch at a very much reduced rate versus replacement of sidewalk. This one would be similar to the volunteer sidewalk program, where we would go out for an RFP in November, award in December, January, and then individual projects would be work orders sent directly to the contractor as they're received. Again, this one, if there was a replacement of an ADA ramp involved, that would be covered by the city. Eligible features are only those that contribute to the slip, trip, and fall hazards, but typically the following, sidewalks, curb and gutter, driveway crossings. Non-eligible would be those features not associated directly to the slip, trip, or fall hazard or any other work outside, should be requested through the volunteer sidewalk program. And I'll pause at this one if there's any questions on this program.
Any comments or questions from the commission? Public comments? Madam Clerk?
No, Mr. Mayor, I have no public comment on this item.
Please continue, Director.
So the last one would be the Safe Routes to School program. Again, funding in FY22. We're assuming this year a $200,000 budget. This would go to fund a sidewalk Safe Routes to School master plan. We would contract with an engineering consultant to look at the areas around the school, either a 2-block buffer or 4-block buffer. As it's up to the commission on that preference. And in that, they would do the public outreach. They would talk with the schools, the school district. They would talk to the parent groups, the principals, and then they would go in with some further guidance from the city and on, say, Safe Routes to School projects, that we give them a dollar amount that is set that the city would like to complete in a year. And then they would break up the projects into basically a CIP, so that starting in fiscal year 23, we would have our first project that came out of that study. This study is probably going to take less than 6 to 8 months to complete. If we got it out in July, the biggest thing would be waiting for school to get back into session so we could schedule those stakeholder group meetings. We would establish our Safe Routes to School program per the Safe Routes to School national program. Again, we would, develop a CIP prioritizing beginning in fiscal year with a goal to complete in 10 years, depending upon obviously the scope. 2 years, 2-block buffer would be a lot quicker to complete than a 4-block. And again, ADA ramps are proposed to be covered 100% by the city. Eligible features, sidewalks, curb and gutter, driveway crossings, and those features impacted by the sidewalk construction. I'll pause here for any questions on this program.
Comments or questions from the commission?
Yeah, Mr. Konopke. So on the ADA ramps, 100% covered by the city. Am I understanding it right then that we get the $200,000 study done? It tells us build sidewalks within 2 to 4 blocks around schools, and then we charge the homeowners, right? We order sidewalks in those areas, but the city would pay for 100% of the ADA ramps that are ordered to be put in.
The ordering of the sidewalks or committing other funds to complete the projects would be a commission discussion. But as far as the ADA ramps, that would be a process of how we've already done our mill and overlay program where we go in a year or two before that area and we do the ADA ramps, we would just split some of that money off so that when we're doing, volunteer sidewalk programs or this program, that those ADA ramps get completed through that ADA compliance money that's in the budget.
Okay, so we're not proposing today where the funding source is. We can't commit any future commission to fund these anyway, even if we do get a CIP out of this, right?
As far as right now, we're just proposing for fiscal year 22 to do the study, to do the slip, trip, and falls, and then the volunteer sidewalk program, depending on the funding source for that one, as it's currently funded through the interfund fund.
So, I mean, I've expressed some skepticism over buying a $200,000 study on safe routes to schools here at our previous time this came up. I guess explain to me, what we need to, like, let's say we take it at the base minimum, 2 to 4 blocks around schools, completing these networks. We've got the SRTS site. I've read through it. It's lovely, helpful stuff that even a simpleton like me can get. We have a traffic engineer at the city. We have a citizens advisory body in MTAC. We've got the school district who's always ready, willing, and able to come in and comment on city street projects adjacent to schools. What is it that we are getting for $200,000 of another study that we can't do significantly in-house? Put together these prioritization processes for SRTS in-house with the work of Mr. Young, who's proven himself mighty capable, and instead really flip these dollars, instead of another study in the city of Helena, to tangible results for kids who are trying to get to school safely today.
Thank you, Commissioner. If you're Mayor, I'd like to have an opportunity to
Go ahead.
provide an answer. The team is at capacity. We do not have staff to do this work. So I understand and I appreciate all of the expectations, and I know our team is fantastic and can do a lot, but to expect that we can reprioritize the opportunity here, I understand. This is about students, and I understand that this is a priority of the commission. That I don't disagree with you that another study isn't always the answer, and these are options. These aren't the final recommendation.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I just ask maybe the question even more directly? Why not put this money just towards constructing sidewalks along Knight Street, which has been decades of conversations? Director Konopka, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
Mayor and commissioners, we could put the money directly towards the Knight Street project if you wish. The priority, as city manager had stated, is for us to get basically a roadmap so that the safe routes to school safe projects don't get lost. We have a CIP that clearly delineates the projects on a year-by-year basis. I agree that another master plan it's just another master plan, and some of our plans may have been used more than others, but to prioritize which school or which route gets done first, that really is going to have to take some in-depth public interaction and working with the school district to try to understand, changing demographics of schools and changing demographics of neighborhoods to prioritize those sidewalk projects properly, so that we're catching areas that are up and coming, that have younger kids now that soon will be going to middle school or to high school. So I think I think we can accomplish both. We can do safe routes to school and accomplish this master plan. The 200,000 is an estimate, and an engineer that's familiar with safe routes to school may be able to come in and do it a lot cheaper. We just wanted to have a placeholder so that we had the money to move forward with the safe routes to school program that provides that priority list in those safe routes for the school children.
So if I could also, the city has not taken responsibility for sidewalks in the city of Helena. We've, in the city code, said that if you own property next to the sidewalk, you got to fix it. So this is our effort in trying to be put together a program that's longer term as opposed to just jumping on the first thing that I know Ninth Street needs it, but I don't know also that our community members who have occupied the right of way where we need to put that sidewalk in are going to appreciate it when we come that Monday and start ripping out their grass. So there's work that has to be done. That includes planning in advance to ensure that we have a long-term plan. So that's the expectation of the team, is to be thoughtful and not reacting, so that we can build something that doesn't get dropped later. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I guess I would just to comment. I'm comfortable with following Director Kanaki's, professional judgment here and being more strategic. I know one thing I'll be really interested to see come out of it is, Ninth Street is a really good example where, 20 years ago, demographics were that most of the kids were on the east side of CR, and now, a lot of those kids are actually coming from the west side, which also doesn't have sidewalks. I'm even thinking about just in my neighborhood, I see, little second, third, fourth graders walking to Broadwater in the street every day. I'll be curious to see, what rises to the top of what are our most strategic routes to really serve these routes to schools. But I will say I'm comfortable with following, the professional opinion of Director Kanaki here, and really making sure that we can get it right and target the money where it's going to have the most difference in the years to come.
So how did we come up with 200,000, Director Kanaki?
Mayor and Commissioners, we've had some, proposals for other plans, and with the scope of this, depending on if it's a 2-block buffer or 4-block buffer, greatly influences how much stakeholder interaction there's going to be. I have a general map here that, if it's a 4-block buffer, probably covers about 65 to 75% of the city itself, whereas a 2-block buffer is probably somewhere in the 40% range. So the amount of public interaction, depending on the scope of the program, would greatly affect the cost, and we tried to give an estimate that would be realistic, but I guess depending on the scope and consultants' workloads, maybe high or maybe low.
Well, maybe a question for Mr. Kanofsky. If the commission said today, go ahead with the study, right? If there's 3 votes for a study, is there any reason why, or any way we wouldn't have the ability to go out if we said, well, sure, you're going to go do a study, it's going to take 8 months, we'll prioritize, we'll talk about funding in the future. But if the commission also appropriated $200,000 additional dollars today, or at the budget session, that we wouldn't be able to go and say, hey, go get started on the sidewalks around Broadwater. I think Commissioner Dean brought up a great example. There's no way, for example, that Broadwater School will not be identified as a huge problem, right? We know that the 2 to 4 blocks around Broadwater are a massive sidewalk deficiency. We're going to pay a consultant. The consultant's going to tell us put sidewalks in there. Maybe it's year 1, maybe it's year 5, maybe it's year 3, but it's going to be there, right? And so we could get started today, even if we're going to spend our time paying for a consultant study that, if 3 people agree to do that. But is there any reason why we couldn't just get that money in there and start on one of those projects that we know is going to be in demand? We know that Central was in the works for 4 years before we approved it. And so if we don't start these projects today, Broadwater School doesn't have sidewalks potentially until 2025, maybe 2024 if we're lucky, or maybe if we really get moving earlier. But that's my concern, right? Go get the study. I won't be here when it's done. You guys can prioritize what you want. But I look at these kids who can't walk to school safely, and I see an opportunity to do it today. It feels like we all agree on this. So, if I can't stop us from spending another $200,000 in a study we don't need, I don't think, can we at least reach some consensus as a group that we could get through some projects that we just know. You say 2 to 4 blocks around a school, that's Broadwater School. So put $200,000 and start building sidewalks. That would make sense.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Any other comments from the commission? All right. Are you done, Director Konopky?
Mayor and Commissioners, in the interest of time, I had one other slide. It's just the notification process. If you want me to run through it.
Please, go ahead.
So if a service request or self-referral, which is somebody interested in being on the volunteer sidewalk program, is received by roadway code enforcement, the process is within 5 business days, they'll go out and do their initial inspection. Within 24 hours, a notice of violation, if there is any, would be submitted to the property owner. Then within that, they have 10 days of the first notice to respond to the city. If after 10 days there's no response, we send a final notice. And then if no notice or no communication is received at that point, and I know this sounds a little black and white, but we do go out and attempt to knock on their door and make sure that they're informed. It could be as simple as they're down in Arizona for the winter and not receiving their mail. So we try to work with homeowners, but this is kind of just the guidelines that we go by. And then if it's during a construction season, and we haven't received any correspondence and can't contact the property owner, then the contractor under the slip, trip, and fall program would be given a work order, and they would go and complete that work. If not, if the homeowner wanted to do the work themselves, they would, we would work with them on their days, but we would try to keep them within that 30 to 45 days as they remedy it. Once they notify us that the work has been completed, we would be there within 3 business days to evaluate and re-inspect it, and give them the thumbs up, or try to see, hopefully everything's good to go. If we ended up doing the work, we would re-inspect after the contractor was finished with the work. Billing would be verified, and then the appropriate method of adding that cost, either invoicing the property owner or putting it on the property taxes, as we do now with the volunteer sidewalk program. That would be the method that we would go by. Be happy to answer any questions on this or any of the programs if anybody's thought of anything else.
Yeah, thank you, Director Konopky. I see a raised hand. So for public comments. But before we go to the public comment, do we have any comments on this topic for the director from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, just really quickly, I had 2 questions that I actually just got asked this last week. The first one is the slip, trip, and fall complaints. Are those anonymous?
According to the My Helena app, they can be. There's a there's a box to be checked. So that would be up to the complainant to check that box or not.
Okay, and then my other question was, you mentioned that you guys are going to purchase, I think you said, a sidewalk grinder for those tripping hazards that are less than an inch. If someone had that, they have this issue, can they work with the city to get it resolved using that if it fits that criteria?
Yes, that was the intention of purchasing that, would be instead of like the picture in the lower right-hand corner, instead of say having to replace maybe 2 panels and that at that cost, we would be able to grind that and try to mitigate that trip hazard at a much reduced rate, or however the program figures out those fees.
So even if you don't hear from them, that this could still be an option if they want to work with you.
Yes, unless we get clear direction from the homeowner that said that, you know, they wanted to replace that panel for whatever reason. If it meets the criteria for grinding or another method that's obviously cheaper than bringing a contractor in to replace, we would go with that method before we would go and replace it.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this topic for the director from the commission? Okay,
I have a
public
question.
comment.
I have a question that's not actually for the director. It's actually for the 5 of us. You know, I'd like to. Yeah.
I was wondering if we can go back to that public comment, that person hand being raised for a bit, and then we can come back to address your concern, if that's okay.
Sure. I have no problem if we can keep talking.
Madam Clerk, would you, the public comment, the hand that's raised, can we have that person comment?
Go ahead, Mr. Worth.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Greg Worth, reside at 501 State Street. I am also a member of the City of Helena Non-Motorized Travel Advisory Council, and I'd like to comment on 2 topics here. One is appreciation for the city and continuing the volunteer sidewalk replacement program. My observation is that there's been more sidewalks replacements happening this year than I can recall, and it's just heartening to see people taking interest, and the city taking interest in providing non-motorized connectivity. The other comment would be relating to the Safe Routes to Schools program. And I'd also request the city use the $200,000 for sidewalk and ramp replacements, specifically around Broadwater School is an item that we have talked about at our MTAC meetings. Not opposed to, you know, an engineering study, but I'd suggest that, you know, the city pursue any grants to help pay for that study. MTAC in the past has talked about the, you know, the lack of facilities and sidewalk, the deficiencies and the ramps around Broadwater School. We have marked crosswalks, but there are no receiving ramps on either side. You know, we have talked about it numerous times, and we certainly can provide an approved motion to help guide the city commission. We've performed numerous walk audits. Sarah Sandow is our representative from Lewis and Clark Public Health. She's offered to facilitate walk audits at the schools, and we can do one at Broadwater School. Sidewalks around schools have been specifically recommended in the LRTP to reduce vehicle trips around schools. Broadwater specifically is noted as one that has recommended missing sidewalks to be replaced. I think we're replacing or installing sidewalks around Broadwater School. You know, it's a very similar project to the 6th Ward project that it was just awarded here recently, that can be, you know, handled with city staff. And as a ratepayer into the street maintenance fund, you know, my position is that using the $200,000 to pay for sidewalks is a better use of our maintenance funds, you know, to provide sidewalk for kindergartners and to help starting to address these legacy issues we've been talking about. You know, in perspective, you know, the $200,000 can pay for roughly a mile of sidewalk, you know, versus a study that seems to be more valuable in my opinion. So just offer those thoughts for your consideration, and MTAC is available to provide any other further guidance that the City Commission desires. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Worth. Any other public comments? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no other raised hands and no written public comment on this item.
Thank you, Commissioner Halliday.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just thought this was an opportunity. I mean, I'd be curious whether commissioners have thoughts on this question of either just swapping out the $200,000 instead of doing a study and putting it towards actual construction tangible results.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner Logan.
I guess a question maybe for the manager. Relative to Director Canopy's presentation here tonight, these programs are in the preliminary budget. Is that accurate?
You're
No, they are not.
muted.
No, they are not.
So couldn't we consider these as budget amendments rather than consensus driven thing at an administrative meeting?
Absolutely. The intention of tonight's presentation was to ensure and to respond to the original ask, which was to come back based on the input that we received at the admin meeting and clarify what that direction was. It was not to make a decision around the spending because we don't have the money to do it. So you're right. The 700 and I think we talked about the discretionary dollars. This is this would be that additional set of dollars opportunity that I shared for the FY22 budget. There is no funding for this program otherwise.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So I guess relative to Commissioner Halliday's question, I guess I would see it as if one of us wanted to put forward an amendment, then we vote on it.
Right. And
well, and I'll just say, oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, and I would recommend it that we go that route, but go ahead.
Sure. I mean, we're not coming to consensus, just like we didn't come to consensus to reconsider the Northwestern resolution, which now we're putting on the agenda as a reconsideration of the Northwestern resolution. Really, I'm just looking to see commissioners' thoughts, because this is that time for the robust, wonderful conversations that we've said these meetings are for. Right? We've had a lot of back and forth with the manager. If a commissioner wants to say, I don't want to talk about whether or not we'd spend $200,000 next year, that's your prerogative. I'm simply asking the floor of us if anyone wants to have that discussion of which would we rather do, tangible $200,000. Maybe someone says I want to do both, but that's the kind of discussion I'm trying to figure out if people are willing to have. If they don't, that's fine. We can have it at the commission meeting, but this is a notice meeting. This is our time for discussion. And I'm just curious if anybody has thoughts on the idea of $200,000 for study versus $200,000 for construction.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments from the commission?
Yeah, Mayor, I would just say, I mean, I would support moving forward with a project in the budget, in the FY22 budget, if there's interest in that, and perhaps would look to the staff, for its recommendations. I think the challenge we face is, we had budgeted Ninth Street a couple years ago, and then, in the last budget cycle, ultimately decided it got dropped right from the budget. So, if this commission is not interested in moving forward with Ninth Street anymore, I mean, that ultimately is the decision of the commission. I guess I would be interested in scoping the potential of building into the budget a concrete safe routes to school project. And, I mean, I think would potentially look at the staff for some feedback on what that might be. Options one and option, or slip trips and falls and the volunteer, I think those look good, and I'm comfortable moving forward, with commission amendments to the budget to reflect those two. I think maybe safe routes to school perhaps needs a little bit more fleshing out, and I would support having a concrete project in the works for FY22.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commission? I personally will also support sidewalks versus spending approximately $200,000 on another study. Because I think we've been teetering on building the sidewalks for the school for a while now, and we haven't done it. I think we should, in my opinion, we should move forward and just do what we have to do. So I'll support that, the sidewalk versus the study. But we got to move along. Do we have any public comments? Okay. Information only, we have none. Number 7, review a future agenda item for next commission meeting. Draft proposed future commission administrative meetings agenda. Madam Halshaw.
Thanks, Mayor and Commissioners. This is the list we provide to you on projects we're planning to bring forward, or items that are coming forward on the agenda, just to make sure that you're aware of them. And they do move based on the volume of the night, or whether or not something is actually ready to move forward. So in summary, if you have any items, let me know if you need them and we'll add them.
Are there any other items for the manager? Yes, Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Thanks, Mayor. I guess just one process question. When I was looking at the commission calendar, both sort of the online and the PDF version, I don't see June 28th reflected on our calendar. And I just wanted to confirm that that is, I don't know when we noticed that, but that is a date that we are meeting.
Yes, we will be meeting, but and I will just publicly tell you right now and apologize, but I will be meeting through Zoom because I'll be out of state. But I will be there. I'll be present through Zoom. Any other comments from the commission or directions for the city manager?
Well, Mayor, I had one thing, just given the email that we received earlier this week about K's Kids, I was wondering if there is an update from the city manager on where things stand with that program and next steps.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Much like many people, many organizations in the community, it's really hard to get seasonal workers. And we have not received any applications that will continue the program. Thankfully, the team was able to reach to all of the applicants, or excuse me, all those who had registered, so that they knew we would restart if we found someone, as opposed to we're postponing. So at this point, it is postponed. I know the team is looking at options to use the grant dollars for an after-school rec program. You know, it is the first summer after COVID. There's a lot of, as I understand it, there's a lot of teachers who are, and students also, who are doing catch-up programs over the summer. It's really an interesting dynamic between the students and those who are also on leave, but trying to catch up over the summer, just based on what their experience was. The other part is the pay. Pay is low. So as with all of the positions that are seasonal, we have to, and we are improving the pay, but they're just not as competitive as some of the businesses. So we'll continue to work on that. These short-term positions are just that way, unfortunately.
Madam Manager, what kind of outreach did the team do? Because I didn't even hear anything out there. So, or maybe I missed it. But what were some of the outreach efforts?
For advertising?
Yes, ma'am.
That we need them. The positions were filled until last week, when those who were not able to complete didn't show for work. So I would say that we didn't have a crisis until we didn't have somebody to do the job. So that happened last week. That happened last Thursday, was that confirmation email. So then as soon as we learned that, I reached out to Rex, The team began as many conversations as they could have and trying to find resources of typically who we could find, but there's not been position fairs. There's not been some of those larger conversations so that there was someone in the background that could fill in. That just doesn't exist and didn't exist.
So could we try one last ditch effort? Go radio, go newspaper and all of that?
Yeah, the team I can certainly follow up with Director Panozzo, but again, we're still dealing with a competition and a pay rate that's low for a job that is fast turnaround. So the people that we're looking at, so I just want to be realistic and share to you that we're doing and reaching to those we know would likely be about a pool for us. These are also not just positions where the kids are just brought in. There's a skill set too that we're evaluating. There have been placed, ads have been placed on local radio stations. It looks like from the chat, Renee, our HR director, that there have been ads placed on local radio stations, digital and print newspapers throughout the state.
Okay, let's just do one last ditch effort. I think we can get people, because that program is very important, and to see it go by the wayside, I want to make sure we've exhausted all our avenues. I know you stated we've reached out to people we know. We should start reaching out to people we don't know also. So let's do one last ditch effort, and at least I can rest assured, I can let it go if it doesn't work out.
Thanks, Mayor.
Even TV, let's go on TV. But yeah, that's my soapbox. I'm getting off it. And any other comments? At this time, we will go to.
Mayor, may I just ask one quick question on that topic?
Yes, please go ahead.
So, I don't actually know the answer, but to the city manager, do you have the authority to, if the salary or the hourly pay is part of the challenge, do you have some flexibility around that, or is it completely limited?
No, I do have authority to do that. The reality of the timing, someone who doesn't show to work and then trying to recruit within 4 days has been difficult. So yeah, we can, of course, we can. It also affects that longer term. We're in the middle of our budget season. As you know, we built into those positions where there are improvements in pay so that we could actually try and impact that longer term. Those are built into that one-time cost though. And I know it's a concern of the commission. But just in the long run, we're going to have to continue, and we have not had a really good study of how we're paying and what we're paying. Our classification system. Perhaps maybe I should step back and say that we have not done a good job as an organization managing the information that's used to reflect on methods that are repeatable in the long run. So yeah, I can always throw $5 more an hour at something, but that doesn't make it something that's defendable in the long run, and it certainly doesn't make it fair across the rest of the positions that might be within that classification either. So that's the other expectation that I have of my role, is to be conscious of the larger impact on the others in the organization too. But yeah, thank you. It is absolutely in our purview, and we would do that.
Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that that's being discussed.
Any final comments from the commission? Okay, at this time, is there anyone from the public wishes to address the commission? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no raised hands and I have no written public comment at this time.
Okay, we'll give them another 45 seconds and then we'll move forward. Madam Manager, do you have your direction?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, any final comments from the commission? Thank you and see you next week. This meeting is formally adjourned.